Hello to everyone and the internet. It is currently Friggers Day, January 18th. I am Nathan of Washington, and you are watching Culture Shock, the only show on the internet that knows how to separate an issue of culture from an issue of politics. And this is the news. Alright, so this today is going to get very creepy. This is going to be very creepy, folks. A startup company starts facilitating young blood transfusions. Ugh. It's the hideous trend of blood transfusions from the young to the from the poor young to the wealthy old. They claim it clears up their skin, makes them healthy, fights the aging process, prevents cancer, act like it's some sort of panacea. Elizabeth Bathory much? Unfortunately, I think we need to make this legal, because if we try to prohibit this from happening, remember alcohol prohibition from the 30s and the 40s, where prohibiting alcohol just ended up putting it in the hands of the mafia? Making something illegal that has capital demand puts it in the hands of criminals who would then supply that demand. Because when was the last time that criminals, obeyed the law? Could you just imagine it? Someone finds like a dead teenager in like an alley with like their body completely drained of all blood. Like they were just bled completely dry. That unfortunately could be a reality even now. Just thinking about it makes me profoundly uncomfortable. But these guys, they're called the Ambrosia Company. The Ambrosia Snake Oil Company. Well, it's just Ambrosia, but, But you know what I mean, it's just snake oil salesman. But they have clinics in Los Angeles, Tampa, Omaha, Houston, and San Francisco. And it costs just $8,000 for 1 pint of young blood. Hospitals have been caught harvesting organs from living patients before. Like deliberately jumping the gun on declaring them dead so they can harvest the organs. What if they suddenly did that with blood? What if they started draining all their blood and selling it to the Ambrosia Company? I wouldn't be surprised. Some hospitals are hella dirty. Criminal. Bottom line is these transfusions, however, are hella dangerous. So if you're an upper middle class or wealthy older person that's in their 70s or 80s, septic or octogenarian, I would advise you against this, because you're not taking into consideration blood types. Like, what if it's not compatible for yours? What if your body rejects it? That could make you sick too. It might even be worse than cancer. Not a lot of people don't even really know what the effect of what being infused with someone else's blood type would do. Even I don't know. Uncertain. Because it's just something they don't do. They try their best to avoid it. But the scientific data does not reflect the conclusion that young blood fights aging and cancer. Scientists are against it. They basically say it's like just another panacea myth. And the data I saw would heavily reflect that I think it's just a placebo effect. To some extent, I believe it is a placebo effect. And the initial tests were conducted on rats, and it did seem that the rats improved for a little while. Like, it helped the development of certain proteins. So yeah, you could develop, changing out your blood for someone else's could cause you to develop proteins you normally didn't. Admittedly, it can do that. But getting protein does not fight the aging process. That's not how that works. Bottom line is, it's just a creepy fad. It's a hella creepy fad. It gives me the fucking heebie-jeebies like you wouldn't believe. And now, of course, we have to talk about the Gillete ad. Of course. Is it the most hated video of all time? Let's find out. How's my Varg impression? But... oh, yeah, hold on. I literally got to stick my finger in the camera like, let's find out. There you go. But the Gillete ad and its implications. So if you're not familiar, if you haven't seen it, basically it was a toxic masculinity ad. It featured a kid being horribly bullied, children fighting and wrestling on the ground, boys obviously, sexual harassment, just all the male behaviors that the left likes to hate on. And surprisingly, most of the behaviors exhibited were fairly inappropriate. But trust me, based on the way that based on the way that it was portrayed in the ad, they weren't targeting those behaviors because they were bad. They were targeting those behaviors because they're associated with men and with male behavior. Because the left wants men to behave in a particular way. And I think Gillette made this ad as sort of reflexively like, don't hurt me! Because these SJW snowflakes are powerful, right? They dox people and they ruin their lives. They get them fired and shit. It's a very powerful vocal minority. And so Gillette might be creating the ad to try and stay off of the SJW radar as a self-defensive maneuver. I think that's probably what it was. Or maybe there might even be an SJW in the company that pushed it. But at the same time, let's not pretend that toxic masculinity is a good thing. But at the same time, it should also be a term that should be retired in favor of the statement that sexual harassment and bullying are not okay. Now, see, here's the thing. Women don't understand men. Two boys wrestling and fighting on the ground, that's just how they deal with that's just how males deal with each other. That's how we work out our problems with each other and bond sometimes. Right? We men are very physical creatures. Sometimes we can be incredibly tactile. We also seem to be a bit more vulnerable to things like nostalgia, and like we want to like have physical contact, like touch something from our childhood, you know? Otherwise, it's maybe not entirely real to us. And it's just the physical act of, wrestling and working out our emotional issues with each other. It's just kind of what we do. Like, me and my brother used to fight with our friends all the time, and it'd get pretty vicious, but at the end, we'd still all be friends at the end of the day. It's very normal. Letting boys wrestle is fine, so long as they don't go too far, like to the point of like serious injury, which is honestly fairly rare. But chasing kids in the middle of the street and harassing women and like pinching and attacking their butt and so forth is not okay. Personally, I think what masculinity should be, as long as you're respecting others and minding the law and your morals, just do what comes natural. Tussling on the ground to work out your issues and bond is natural. But guess what, men? Crying is also natural. I am completely unafraid to cry. I am completely unafraid to cry if I find there's reason to cry. There's nothing wrong with it, with a show of emotion. But at the same time, don't force it. Just let it be what it is. I mean, if you're not a particularly emotional man, then you're not a particularly emotional man. I say just respect others, be moral, be lawful, and, just do what comes natural. But toxic masculinity is a weapon of the left. And while some of the issues presented in the ad were legitimate, they weren't doing it out of any honest desire to target those behaviors. It was out of, the left's narrative of attacking men for being traditionally masculine. And at the end of the day, what the fuck does any of that have to do with fucking razors for shaving your goddamn face? What's that even have to do with it? It is the craziest thing of all. What is even the relevance? Why does this leftist narrative have to be literally everywhere and everything? It's insane to me. I see a nefarious agenda here. I totally see a nefarious agenda. But keep ads relevant to just your product. Don't politicize literally everything. It's not necessary. Woman sees dead son in kitchen photo. Now this one's weird. I actually do believe in ghosts, and I've seen many a ghost photo. I go where the evidence takes me, and the evidence is that there is a bizarre phenomenon we call ghosts, where sometimes we can see a visual apparition of a deceased person. I personally have made eye contact with a ghost, with a plate glass window in between us, at a haunted house in my hometown. Scariest thing I ever saw. Mostly just because its eyes were like completely dead. There was no emotion, no expression. Oh, it was cold and empty as the void itself. Which, I'm not alone in that. People are really creeped out and terrified when they see someone whose eyes look a little dead. You know? Like they're just kind of empty, like a shell. People with PTSD often have that look to them, like, you know, like they're not totally there. Like a part of them died or something. Or Christian missionaries, however you feel about Christianity, going to Africa, and they go missing for a little while, and they're later found. They'd apparently been messed with by some voodoo boker, and like, you know, they come back, they've been messed with voodoo, they went through a voodoo ritual, and they're just never the same. They've got that dead look in their eyes. Like something's not quite right going on up in the head. But her son was addicted to a fake Xanax supplement. He was a druggie, about 23 years old, and one of the older Generation Zs. And he died some time ago, and they had an intruder alarm set up in their house where they had a phone notification where their in-house cameras notified them if they caught any movement or sound. And while they were in bed, the daughter had her phone, and her phone notified her that someone was in the kitchen. Which she then took a look at the photo and what she saw, and she posted the photo online. I saw it. It didn't look like most ghost photos in particular. It was mostly in profile from the side, and the apparition was just kind of standing there for a while, sort of mumbling to itself, as it was described. Some inaudible mumbling of some kind. It was pretty creepy, I gotta admit. The photo itself, and the whole story is hella creepy. But it looked just like their dead son, apparently, all the way down to the detail of the beard. In the photo, I couldn't really see a beard, but it did. The apparition appeared very smoky. It kind of looked like smoky, but it was a definite human form. Of course, skeptics would say, "Oh, that it was just smoke, and that was pareidolia." But how the hell does smoke set off a security system like that? A camera mistaking smoke for a fucking intruder? That seems extremely unlikely. And it looked pretty human. See, the funny thing about pareidolia is pareidolia always looks more vague than the real thing. It's always, you know, much less clear, which is a detail that the skeptics conveniently drop, of course. This was clearly an object. It wasn't like an ink blot, which is what pareidolia is. It's not like an ink blot test or a cloud. This was a literal anthropomorphic shape, completely unmistakable. And it had a very misty quality to it. So, chances are, I would say that there's a ghost in their house that looks like their dead son. I'm not saying what ghosts are, I'm just saying that they're apparitions of dead people. And that they're actually really freaky. This is probably one of the best proofs I've ever seen of ghosts and ghost footage. completely blew me away. This is the best evidence I've ever seen. And now something a little more rationally frightening. Prayer mats. Lots and lots of prayer mats found near U.S.-Mexico border. Apparently there's a fuck ton of Muslims in Mexico now. The religious demographic of Mexico, especially towards their northern border with the United States, is becoming more and more diverse as time goes on, as more and more different religions and faiths are appearing in that region. And apparently Islam is just the newest to get there. The people from the Middle East make it to South America and try and spread their beliefs there, and apparently it's been working. If it wasn't bad enough having to worry about drug cartels, sex traffickers, MS-13, and whatnot, now we gotta worry about Muslims. And they could be Muslim terrorists. They might be Shiites. The Shia Muslims are not quite so hostile to the United States. They believe that they need to spread Islam to the whole world. They're a special little Abrahamic cult. But as far as actual acts of violence, they're really not known for, the Shiites are really not known for acts of violence. But it's still a strong possibility that they could threaten the United States at some point. We need that wall. We need that wall right the hell now. And personally, I would love to see the government shutdown end with Nancy Pelosi's arrest. Speaking of arrests, remember crazy-ass Rosie O'Donnell? Well, she's at it again. Says Trump will be arrested before 2020 win. Calls him a tyrant. Arrested? Arrested for what? What did he do? Oh, right, Russian collusion, right? Yeah, I'm sorry, you're never going to be able to prove that, Rosie. See, convictions and arrests require evidence. You have none. Because the claim is a lie. It is false. And how is he a tyrant, exactly? What has Trump done that makes him a tyrant? Like, okay, gee, let's see. What has his presidency been marked by? The fewest market regulations we've seen in a long time? Is that tyranny? How about creating thousands of jobs? Is that tyranny? How about showing presidential support on a cultural level for the LGBT community? That tyranny? Is his tax plan tyranny? What about Trump is so tyrannical? Oh, right, the government shutdown. Oh, when Democrats do it, it's fine. But i.e. Bill Clinton. But when Trump does it, oh, it's tyrannical. Yeah, right. Please, Trump tyrannical. That's hilarious. The Democrats are far more tyrannical than Trump could ever hope to be. It's just not in his character. The man obviously respects the idea of freedom way too much. I'll go ahead and play you the video clip of Rosie. You guys listen to this.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, the guy in the car.
No, I do not.
You don't think?
I certainly do not.
Okay.
I think he'll be arrested.
Do you think it's actually going to happen?
Yes, I certainly do. I believe in America, and I believe in our political system, and I believe we will right the wrong of the tyranny of Donald Trump.
What about one last thing? The wall. Do you think the wall ever happen?
Thank you. It will never happen.
Never.
Tyranny of Donald Trump. What tyranny? Again, what has Donald Trump done that makes him a tyrant? What has he done? I haven't seen anything in his presidency that makes him a tyrant. These liberal celebrities are just, they're idiots. They're the dumbest people on the planet, I swear. Our final story today, before I blow a gasket, before the stupidity literally ends up giving me a seizure. British government mobilizes army reserves to deal with no-deal Brexit aftermath. Apparently, the ever despotic British government is afraid that if they do the no-deal Brexit thing, that there's going to be rampant chaos through the streets and so forth. And so they need to get their army reserves in place. What seems a more likely scenario to me is that they want that army reserve in there to crack down on and abuse their own citizens probably from peaceful protest. Perhaps Britain will go yellow vest. Maybe that's what they're afraid of. Maybe they should go yellow vest. Shut down globalism. It doesn't work. These politicians are filthy, dirty, and all hell, and they're going to ruin your country. There is no government in existence today that respects anyone's rights anymore. Like, they pretend to, and they respect your rights to the extent that they'll, in order to avoid getting in trouble, or at least, they'll keep up appearances of respecting your rights. But deep down, they're going to be, surveilling you and censoring you. They'll use digital tyranny. Right. Dorothy O'Donnell calls Trump a tyrant, but has done nothing to merit that label. However, Theresa May and people within the British government, they've definitely done shit that makes them tyrannical. What's really going to happen? Probably the same thing that's happening in the U.S. with our government shutdown. Government suddenly goes away, and surprise, surprise, the Earth's still spinning. No one has died because of it, and surprise, surprise, the people aren't rioting or causing chaos or looting. The government always thinks that without their absence, everything will turn to shit. No, everything turns to shit with their presence, not with their absence. Anti-authoritarian for life, bitch. Anyway, that's it for Culture Shock today, folks. I'm out.